Hello, and welcome to an appropriately unhinged recap of Fifth Element fashion on Read the Care tag. This podcast is about anything and everything fashion related, for all of those who never grew out of playing dress up, with a sprinkle of history, a dabble of pop culture, a healthy dollop of fashion obsession, and a pinch of philosophical questioning. I hope you enjoy the show. This episode, we will be talking about a cult classic film whose screen grabs dominate retro-futuristic Pinterest boards and is one of my all-time favorites, The Fifth Element. Now, while writing this episode, I realized that it was more than twice as long as any of my previous episodes, so let's just say, in classic Mike's Mike style, this one will be a two-parter. Now, if you've never seen the film, come on, what are you doing? You gotta watch this movie. Set in the 23rd century, Bruce Willis and Milla Jovovich star as an unlikely duo that venture on a mission to save their world. A world brought to life by the incredible designs of Jean Paul Gaultier. The sets were created by comic artists Jean Giroir and Jean-Claude Mézières, whose comic books actually inspired the writer of the film and director, Luc Besson, when he first came up with the idea at 16. If you haven't seen the movie, I strongly recommend watching it. Even if you don't enjoy sci-fi or you don't love the plot, the visuals alone are worth it. And with that little teaser, let's dive into it. Disclaimer, if you're watching on YouTube, you will be seeing a lot of the visuals from the film. Although I won't be getting too much into the plot, that's your spoiler alert now. If you want to watch the movie first, go do that. So, The Fifth Element was one of the most expensive European film productions of its time, but Besson was adamant about his vision. He had a desire to depart from the dimly lit space movies of the time and wanted a bright, almost manically crazy look. He wasn't seeking to create a realistic-looking potential future. Instead, Besson was embracing the crazy imaginings from the early 20th century ideas of a modular future. Besson also liked to choose specific color palettes for each of his films, and The Fifth Element was decidedly orange. Beyond this, though, Gaultier had pretty much free range. And it seems that Gaultier and Besson were a perfect pair, with Gaultier designing each of the 900 costumes worn by extras and over 100 total characters, ensuring that each design was made with intention and purpose. This is one of the things that makes this film so unique. Extras were not relegated to off-the-rack costume rentals to fill in the blanks. No matter how short their screen time was, they got something special. But before we get too deep into the costumes, first, let's learn a little bit about who Gaultier is. He is another one of my favorite Vivienne Westwood contemporaries, but despite their overlap, his story is starkly different from hers. Born and raised in Paris, he was quickly noticed for his artistic talent, making his first collection for his mother and grandmother by the ripe old age of 13. Then, after an apprenticeship with Pierre Cardin and some other French couturiers, he released his first collection in 1976. From then on, a successful shop launch, then a men's collection, and expansion to perfume lines solidified his historic rise in the fashion world. But when he launched his first haute couture collection in 1997, he really made his mark. With the success of this collection, Hermès backed him in launching boutiques all over the world, as well as hiring him as their own head designer. Just like Vivienne and any truly successful designer, he established a very strong signature in his designs, known as a house code. Consistent color palettes, rich in reds, violets, blues, as well as classic black and whites, periodically accentuated with teals, creams, metallics, and off-color pinks and salmons. You would be hard-pressed to find a collection of his without hints of striped sailor mania, the androgynous juxtaposition of outer garments with undergarments, and a gleeful cheekiness that just seems to permeate all of his work. While I can certainly chat about JPG at length, that's not what we're here for today. If you do want an episode about Jean Paul Gaultier in a similar style to the brief history of Dame Vivienne Westwood episode, please let me know in the comments or on Instagram at readthecaretag. Now, The Fifth Element. When Gaultier approached the task of costume designer for this film, he stepped up to the plate with pockets full of his classic design inspirations of bondage, aesthetic subversion, and attitude provocateur. But he did not limit himself to modern ideas of futurism. He also sought inspiration from the past. His own past, in fact, because his apprenticeship with Cardin featured space-age retro-futuristic styles, which he drew on as well. Also, since the film relied mainly on practical effects before the proliferation of CGI in film, it was clear that the costumes and set would have to carry the world on their own two shoulders. JPG decided to manage the mass cast and extra costuming of over 1,000 looks in a unique way. He didn't delegate certain lesser characters to assistants and focus on the main cast himself. Instead, he broke it down into mini collections, where no background character is relegated to being random person number 2 wearing a carbon copy costume of random person number 1 and 3. Even just glancing at the Fifth Element air hostesses, you can see that just like in the real world, there are 2 or 3 uniform options to choose from, styled in subtly different ways. Throughout the film, several main hallmarks of the trends and styles emerge, which create Jean Paul Gaultier's 23rd century world. 1. Expectation subversion. 2. References. 3. Revealing, textured, vibrant, and gimmicky styles are the standard fare of the 2200s fashion trends, which reflect the epitomized future of our consumerist world. Now this time, I'm going to do things a little bit different. Rather than going through the narrative timeline of the movie, or Jean Paul Gaultier's story, I will be going through these key points and how they contributed to creating such a vibrant world. With this first episode, I'm going to go through the first 2 points, and I'll leave the juicy analysis of the 23rd century for part 2. Part 1. Subverting Expectations. Now it's time to discuss the first main character in detail. Corbin Dallas, played by Bruce Willis, first appears on screen, and for the majority of the film, sporting a rubber-like, vertically ribbed tank in a color I can only describe as fire orange. While a bit more fitted and shorter than the typical men's tank, it stays within the realm of a futuristic man's ensemble. However, everything changes when Dallas turns to reveal a strappy, open-back top. Something you would not typically see on a macho ex-military man like Corbin. Gaultier's own menswear collections reveal similar trends. When you see the rough Bruce Willis on screen, you expect tank top undershirts, faded cargos, and heavy combat boots exuding traditional masculine energy. This expectation is subverted through the style of the top. Its brightness, even its material, they all carry a traditionally feminine energy. The cut and the cutouts at the back contribute to this. Yet, here's this big, strong, macho man wearing this outfit. Along with the bright tank, he's got seamed, slim-fit pants made of some sort of durable twill material, and a cut-off sleeve cropped bomber jacket with occasional quilted padding creating a big-shouldered footballer silhouette. Now, the seaming on the pants also is reminiscent of a football uniform. Now remember, this movie was released in 1997. In the 90s, you were extremely unlikely to see a man sporting fitted jeans. The main fits were straight or baggy, and they could be fitted well at the waist and hips, but never the legs. Instead, more fitted jeans were in style for women. But somehow, despite his skinny pants, neon top, and cropped jacket, you'd be lying if you say this character doesn't exude severe masculine energy. Corbin's look creates a visual collage of traditionally feminine clothing attributes, things that a binary mindset would want to interpret as looking silly on the macho man he is portrayed to be. However, this expectation is subverted by the reality that no part of the garment truly detracts from the character, and Bruce Willis looks just as macho as he does in any of the Die Hard movies. The use of a silhouette that accentuates a traditionally strong man body type balances the feminine qualities in the details. It subtly challenges the idea that femininity and masculinity are binary, and demonstrates how styles can be melded into something new by the person wearing them. If we take a closer look at the jacket, it reminds me of Marty McFly's Back to the Future, resizing, self-drying, amazing futuristic jacket. Despite its completely different overall shape, it has the same hints of tubular retrofuturism, mixture of tech materials, and futuristic nylon rubber-esque textures. Then his strappy moto-style combat boots still ground us in this ex-military character's practical and pragmatic nature. This informs us that this is what a practical and pragmatic person would wear in 23rd century New York. At this point, the styles have gotten so outlandish and exaggerated that this is your basic macho man, for whom clothes are a matter of practicality, covering his body, not expressing himself. Now next up, we have the opposite of a conservative and pragmatic person. Ruby Rhod, a flamboyant, prince-esque radio announcer who finds himself in the wrong place at the right time, and becomes entangled with our main characters during the rising action of the film. I say prince-esque not only because the character was inspired by Prince, but Prince was actually supposed to play him. Unfortunately, we lost out on that because of tour date conflicts, and supposedly he thought the costumes were too effeminate. To be fair, he was shown this nude illusion design where his hair would be so long it would go through the back of the netting all the way to the floor and be his only claim to modesty. In the end though, the look that made it into the film was leopard print head to toe, a futuristic double-breasted catsuit whose lapels and collar were constructed in the style of an open portrait collar that was used on women's dresses in the 1950s. This was topped with an elaborate hairstyle, complete with a mic constantly live broadcasting Ruby's every word to the masses. To put it plain and simple, Ruby Rhod is a caricature of a flamboyant, gender-bending person. In short, gay. Or so it seems, until we catch him seducing air hostesses left and right. It's almost like the expectation of what a gay or straight person would look like is a fallacy in and of itself. Not only are queer people not a homogenous group, but consider how far expression of sexuality and gender identities has come in the last 50 years. Think about how different that would look in 200 years. Ruby Rhod is evidently interested in women, and women are interested in him. At the same time, his interactions with Corbin are flirtatious, leaving Corbin floundering for words. It's almost like Besson and Gaultier want to portray a flamboyant superstar character, whose personality is not intrinsically tied to his sexuality. Whether his comments to Corbin are truly flirtatious, or just the ever-on-air riffing nature of a show host, it doesn't really matter. The expectations built up by a character dressed this way, with a high-pitched voice, a theater kid's propensity to sing whatever's going on, are subverted. His unique charisma and feminine elements produce masculinity in a different font, a perfect fit to his world. His second look, which he sports for the gala later in the film, is a similar portrait-style collar catsuit, this time in black velvet, filled with roses at the top like a bouquet. Now with each of these looks, Ruby Rhod is the central look within a mini collection. His entourage of assistants sports looks that are clearly based off of his, even going so far as to change their hair to match their brilliant leaders. I'll be going into more detail on their looks when we get to part 3. Throughout the film, Gaultier is communicating to us that everything is not as it seems, and stereotypical assumptions of what makes someone masculine, feminine, queer, or anything in between are often wrong, both in the past, the future, and the present. Boiling someone down to only their gender and sexuality is reductionist. Ruby and Corbin's personalities are two ends of the spectrum, loud and quiet, flamboyant and reserved, yet both are still distinctly masculine and femme-pursuing characters. If you boil a person down to those two pieces of identity, then the characters are the same. But in reality, it's obvious that they couldn't be more different. Part 2. Authority drunk on references and bandage knit spandex nylon 4-way stretch. Several of the smaller collections within the costume library of this film were uniforms. In this section, I'll be discussing the police, the military, the presidential party, the cruise ship crew members, the scientists, and the antagonists. I jokingly named this section Authority Drunk on References because this is the category in which I felt there was the largest quantity of references to pop culture and media. Starting with the cops. We see the police enter early on, as the government tries to get their hands back on Ledoux. I'm not sure why, but they're really giving Lego Marvel Spider-Man Venom mask set 76187 collectible set? Question mark? All jokes aside, the first time I saw them, I couldn't figure out what the hell their helmets reminded me of. Until, while working on this episode, I got an ad for the upcoming new Venom movie. When I looked it up, I realized Venom came out in 2018. And while it could be from the 80s comics, somehow it didn't feel quite right. But then, it came to me. It wasn't Venom who they reminded me of. While similarly shaped, Venom's head was far too organic looking. No, it was Alien from Alien vs. Predator, or actually Alien from Alien, which came out in 1979. So I guess I could make that reach. All joking aside, I have no idea if this was actually a reference or it came from somewhere else, but who knows? Maybe Gaultier watched Alien a couple years before and then unconsciously referenced that elongated shape. Or then again, maybe I am just reaching. They also sported full metal, extremely armored uniforms, with what seemed like permanently attached riot shields on the back. Their feet are entirely encased in metal, with more than spacesuit level bulk, while being just regular NYPD officers. Their general portrayal as blubbering fools also suggests what might be Gaultier's attitude towards the police. Especially as a gay man in the 1980s, it seems that his impression of police and their use of quote-unquote warranted force might not be the most positive. Now, since we're on this line of thinking, let's take a look at the military. Now, they have a pretty classic look. Tan jackets, felt berets. That is, until the shot cuts away and you see their calf-length coats imbued with a steampunk, space pirate tinged vibe, reminiscent of 18th century men's Marines uniform silhouettes detailed like a formal modern American soldier. Now, the relation to the 18th century Marines may not be accidental. Even the insignia on the coats is a British Marine insignia. So maybe Gaultier was intentionally referencing this. Or maybe it was convergent evolution. We're also treated to a fun little bonus reference with this Princess Leia Trunchbull-esque secondary officer. Her features and physique evoke Principal Trunchbull from Matilda, and even though that movie didn't exist then, the book certainly did. She is completed with practically a copy of the Star Wars Princess Leia buns in the same rich, dark brown color. A small detail that is a cheeky nod to this era of sci-fi film. Next, the presidential party is just as littered with iconic sci-fi references. We see the president enter from behind, wearing shoulder-padded jacket, likely wool, and as he sits down, both him and his aide are eerily reminiscent of Star Trek. The bald-headed president immediately reminded me of Patrick Stewart as Jean Picard, I don't know how he pronounces it. But little did I know, there was a commanding officer called Benjamin Sisko on Star Trek. If you put the two side by side, it literally looks like the president is Disney-bounding as a chic, commanding officer Sisko, minus a mustache. The combination of red, black, and gray with the multi-V necklines is truly an undoubtable reference. Meanwhile, his aide, with elfish features and a bowl cut, feels like a subtle nod to First Officer Spock, once again chicified with the same callback to Gaultier's retro-futuristic origins. In the same sequence, we see the scientists. Even the STEM girlies won't be outdone in the 23rd century. While futuristically chic, their grippy white loafers are reminiscent of classic 90s nurses' shoes. Perhaps they even are them. We only see them very briefly from a bug cam, so it's hard to say. They're paired with classic white pants and white long-sleeve shirts in the style of 1950s medical scrubs. These were paired with surgical aprons in that classic hospital green color, but futurized with rubbery fabric and an asymmetrical closure on the right side of the chest. Some of the personnel sported apron coats with contrast panels on the biceps in an almost iridescent, mossier green. Others had short sleeves, and different personnel paired them with medical caps, headpieces, and peculiar hairstyles. Now, this is a stretch maybe, but this evokes the Rocky Horror Picture Show in my mind. Maybe I've seen that movie too many times, but somehow it felt significant to medicalize the looks. At the end of the day, they are scientists, not medical practitioners. What do they need these rubber scrubs for? They're at computer screens. I think it's a stylistic choice to connect the scientists of a modern, futuristic, set-in-space sci-fi movie with the mad scientists of classic early horror sci-fi literature and later on film, like Frankenstein and the iconic Dr. Frankenfurter from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. In that film, Dr. Frankenfurter brings his own flawless creature, Rocky, to life, while clad in a similarly colored surgical apron gown and pink rubber gloves with glitter peeking out from every seam. Somehow, I can't believe that Gaultier, a proud gay man in the 1980s involved in fashion and subversive art, didn't come across the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And while the film is chock full of its own references, and potentially both pulled on similar references so arrived at a parallel destination, I think it reinforces the point that has now become a through line in this podcast. The self-referential nature of fashion rears its stylish head once again. Speaking of self-referential, if we take a look at the cruise ship crew members, it's clear Gaultier could not help himself but embrace one of his own house codes in the literal nautical characters of the film. Of course, we have the classic striped turtleneck with the navy and gold futuristic sailor-style overshirt reminiscent of his own collections. The top is paired with a sailor's cap, boots, and short white pants. Now, why do I say short pants and not shorts? Not because there really is a difference, but because I have a theory. Basically, up until the Edwardian era, and in some places a little bit later as well, boys would wear short pants until a certain age, at which they were old enough for the dignity of trousers. In the same era, we find many references for the nautical styles that have inspired Gaultier's own house code. Most modern sailors aren't sporting striped tops and ultra-wide pants, are they? I think that Gaultier was referencing this, and using it to reinforce the immature, incapable nature of the ship's crew in the face of the disasters that occur throughout the film. Finally, in the uniform section, we have arrived at my favorite mini collection of the film, our villain and his posse. His name? Jean-Baptiste Emmanuel Zorg. His game? Chaos. Now, this biblically named antagonist is played by Gary Oldman, and portrayed with a tiny square goatee, almost a reverse Hitler stash, a head shaved bald on one side adorned with a plastic panel and a glossy comb-over. Tell me he doesn't kind of look like Hitler. Now, every single person in his entourage wears some variation of these blue plastic skull caps, except for his second in command, while the cronies are relegated to all black skin-tight spandexy outfits. Crony Supreme is shirtless under a bondage-inspired leather jacket, topped off with a bolo tie. His look incorporates classic Gaultier bondage themes and is a supporting character to Zorg's evil Southern gentleman routine. But it doesn't even come close to Zorg's villain eleganza extravaganza. Throughout the film, Zorg wears a shot silk shirt with a Mandarin-style collar featuring an extreme angle upward towards the back with a stereotypically villainous high back collar. Now, I think I should explain shot silk. Have you ever come across a stiff silk that shines with completely different over and undertones? Well, this is called shot silk, and is created via weaving two colors of silk thread, one across the horizontal or weft direction and the other across the vertical or warp direction. This creates this two-tone shimmering texture, and in Zorg's case, I believe the two threads were a warm yellow and an oceany blue, creating golden green and turquoise hues in different lighting. At different points of the film, the shirt is paired with a black and white pinstripe pullover vest or a rubber zip-up waistcoat reflecting a rainbow from orange to green. So far, the look is not too different from an extravagantly suited villain in any other movie, albeit Gaultier-fied. But when the shot pans down and we see him walking, we get some more, say it with me, references! Now first, let's talk look. His riding boots are paired with jodhpurs in a pinstripe that matches his vest and overcoat. Jodhpurs are those vintage riding pants with big poofed sides at the thighs and fitted from the knee down. Then they're paired with a high collar, rubberized coat in the same pinstripe, lined with a fiery orange. Just look at how that coat whips around when he walks. That awkward flutter somehow evokes the image of a child dressed up in their parents' clothes. This thin rubber must have been so interesting to work with, and it contributes to showing the audience that despite his evil nature and intense presentation, he's small fry in the villain world. Now that's all I'll say, no spoilers. Next, let's look at his gait. He has a limp, and the shot of him walking, boots ominously clanging on the metal floor, evokes Penguin vibes from Batman Returns. However, I think this is a valuable moment to note the prevalence of disability and disfigurement in sci-fi and fantasy as a way to denote evil. While we may try to blame recent pop culture, it's actually an extremely old practice. From the classical period to biblical times, disability, disease, and disfigurement was a punishment from heavenly powers. With no scientific explanation for these occurrences, which were often detrimental to the person's health or quality of life, there could be no other answer. Thus, it was perceived as a physical manifestation of the person's sin or evil nature. The ugly equals evil sentence isn't only reserved for the main villain. Secondary villainous characters suffer from this fate as well, although they do fulfill the dumb disposable thugs niche of classic sci-fi movies. These are the Mangalores. Shape-shifting soldiers for hire. According to the Fifth Element fandom wiki, quote, "The Mangalores are believed by some fans to be somewhat based off of the Klingons from Star Trek, the Centaurians from Doctor Who, and the Orcs from Warhammer 40k, due to being extremely violent, arrogant, dim-witted, cruel, and bloodthirsty warrior species with a thrill for war." Their looks seem to be more practical, with a desert spacesuit that, while consistent across the Mangalores, was in various states of disrepair, some distressed to the point of dangling strings at all ends, and others pretty crisp. I think this choice is a reflection of their state as creatures banished to far reaches of the galaxy, limiting their access to spacesuit tailors. Now, I mentioned that they were shapeshifters, and that I'll leave as a little Easter egg for the next episode. Already, we can see that Gaultier's artistry goes beyond a taste for trends or flawless construction. His loving care touches each and every character, so make sure to tune in to the next episode to hear all about the second star of the film, Ledoux, with the iconic red hair, white bandage dress, and gold pants, the supreme being, and countless other incredible costumes. Thank you so much for joining me on Read the Care Tag. Make sure to follow the Instagram at Read the Care Tag for photos of some of the stuff I talked about today. Please follow the show and review it to let me know what you think of my ramblings. As always, sources are linked in the description, and I hope you have a lovely week.